Have you ever noticed that the more aware you become of the world and of your own mind, the lonelier you begin to feel? It is not the usual kind of loneliness, the one we experience when we are physically alone in a room. It is something deeper and harder to explain. It is a strange form of isolation that appears when you begin to see through the collective illusions that keep society stable. It feels as if, by waking up to certain realities, you slowly move away from the shared dream that connects most people. You are still present, you are still talking, you are still participating, but something inside you knows that you are no longer fully inside the same story. This experience is becoming more common in our age of constant information and endless digital connection. People who start observing their own thoughts more carefully, who begin questioning the systems that shape our lives, who study the forces behind media, politics, and culture, often find themselves stepping into a quiet inner space. It is not always a choice. It feels almost automatic. The more clearly they see certain patterns, the harder it becomes to express those insights in normal conversations. They notice the gap between what they perceive and what can be comfortably said. And that gap creates silence. For most of human history, this type of isolation was rare. Human beings lived in small tribes and villages. Being alone was not normal. It was dangerous. Our ancestors depended on each other for survival. They hunted together. They shared stories around the fire. They shared the same myths, the same gods, the same explanations for storms, illness, and death. Reality itself was collective. Meaning was collective. Even disagreements happened inside a shared framework. There was little room for radically different worldviews, because the entire tribe needed a common understanding to function. The big questions of life were answered by tradition. Why are we here? What happens after death? Who controls nature? These answers were already given. You did not need to search for them alone. And if someone started seeing the world differently, the difference was usually small compared to the overall shared belief system. The tribe held reality together. Today, something completely new is happening. For the first time in history, we are experiencing isolation that is not physical, but cognitive and existential. And it is happening at the exact moment when we are more technologically connected than ever before. At first, this seems like a contradiction. We can message anyone instantly. We can video call across continents. We can access endless information. Yet many people report feeling more alone than any generation before them. This paradox becomes clearer when we understand that technological connection is not the same as real understanding. Being connected by devices does not guarantee shared meaning. In many cases, the same technologies that promise connection create distance. The information revolution promised to bring knowledge to everyone. It promised to unite humanity. Instead, it has fragmented our perception of reality. We no longer share a single narrative, not even within the same country. Algorithms shape what we see. News feeds are customized. Opinions are reinforced. Two people can look at the same global event and live inside completely different informational worlds. What is truth for one person is falsehood for another. What is obvious to one mind is invisible to another. In this environment, the person who tries to step outside of echo chambers often finds themselves standing alone. When someone studies economic systems deeply, when they examine power structures, media influence, psychological manipulation, or global technological shifts, they begin noticing patterns that are not discussed in daily conversation. They see incentives behind decisions. They see how narratives are constructed. They see how fear and desire are used to guide attention. And then something uncomfortable happens. Regular conversations begin to feel shallow. Discussions about headlines feel incomplete. Debates about politics often stay on the surface. Trying to introduce deeper analysis into casual talk can create tension. People may feel attacked, they may feel uncomfortable, or they may simply disengage. The result is subtle rejection, or polite silence, or the feeling that you are speaking a different language. This experience is not entirely new. Philosophers throughout history described similar feelings. In the allegory of the cave, told by Plato, a person leaves the cave, sees the outside world, and then returns to tell others. But those who never left cannot understand him. They think he is confused. The one who has seen more cannot easily return to the old perception. The difference today is scale. What was once limited to a few thinkers is now affecting millions of ordinary people who have access to vast information and time for reflection. The painful part is that this isolation goes against our biological design. We evolved to seek belonging. Our nervous systems are wired for shared understanding. Being understood is not a luxury, it is a psychological need. When fundamental differences in perception appear, when two people no longer agree on basic facts or values, something deep inside us feels unstable. It is not just disagreement, it feels like losing common ground itself. Some might say the solution is simple. Find others who think like you. Build communities of awareness. In theory, this sounds easy. In reality, it is complicated. People who question systems deeply are often scattered geographically. Even when they connect online, digital interaction rarely replaces face-to-face presence. Screens transmit words. They do not fully transmit tone, body language, subtle emotional cues. We evolved for physical proximity. Even among highly aware individuals, differences remain. Awareness does not guarantee agreement. Two people can both question media narratives and still disagree completely about solutions. This can create new forms of fragmentation. In addition, many people who think deeply about systemic issues develop emotional defenses. They may protect themselves from disappointment or burnout. Opening up fully becomes difficult. Technology, which could help bridge these gaps, often does the opposite. Social media platforms are built to capture attention. They reward extreme opinions. They amplify conflict. Nuance spreads slowly. Simple outrage spreads fast. Conscious individuals who value complexity often feel out of place in these spaces. Conversations turn into arguments. Dialogue turns into parallel monologues. We are exchanging quantity for quality. Hundreds of interactions replace a few meaningful ones. We confuse visibility with intimacy. We scroll through lives without truly touching them. The result is a subtle hunger for resonance, for someone who truly understands without constant explanation. Let me pause for a moment and ask you something directly. What part of this technological future worries you the most? Is it artificial intelligence replacing jobs? Is it constant surveillance? Is it social fragmentation? Is it social fragmentation? Do you ever lie awake thinking about how fast everything is changing? Many people keep these fears inside. They are afraid of sounding negative. They are afraid of being called paranoid. But silence increases isolation. And they are likely shared by many others who also feel uncertain but do not speak. When we name our fears openly, we reduce their power. When we admit confusion, we create room for honest conversation. Perhaps the first step out of isolation is not solving global problems. It is admitting that we are struggling to understand them together. There is also a neurological aspect to all of this. The human brain did not evolve to process constant global information. For most of history, our ancestors dealt with immediate surroundings, a small group, a local environment. Today, we are exposed to global financial systems, climate models, geopolitical conflicts, rapid technological innovation, and artificial intelligence developments all at once. Trying to understand how these systems connect places a heavy demand on the mind. When someone seriously studies the links between global markets, environmental change, political power, media narratives, and technological acceleration, they are stretching cognitive limits. The brain becomes overloaded, Anxiety increases. A sense of helplessness can appear. Paradoxically, the more someone understands the scale of global complexity, the less capable they may feel within it. History shows that rapid transformation often creates crises of meaning. During the Industrial Revolution, societies experienced massive disruption. Cities grew, machines replaced manual labor, old ways of life disappeared, cultural movements emerged as a response. Art and philosophy tried to restore meaning in a mechanized world. Today, our transformation is faster and deeper. Digital systems reshape identity. Artificial intelligence challenges our idea of human uniqueness. Economic systems evolve quickly, yet we lack shared cultural frameworks strong enough to process these shifts calmly. Instead, we are encouraged to stay distracted. Entertainment is constant, news cycles move rapidly, reflection feels slow and unproductive in a world that rewards speed. But without reflection, awareness becomes heavy. Knowledge without integration creates tension. A troubling consequence of conscious isolation is cynicism. When someone sees corruption, manipulation, environmental damage, and social division, clearly they may lose hope. They may believe that systems are too large to change. They may feel that their voice does not matter. This emotional state can slowly turn into detachment, not because they do not care, but because caring feels exhausting. Hopelessness is dangerous. It disconnects us from action. It reduces motivation. It creates emotional numbness. And yet, complete ignorance is not a solution either. Pretending not to see problems does not solve them. So we stand in a difficult position. Too much awareness can isolate us. Too little awareness can mislead us. The real challenge may not be choosing between awareness and comfort. It may be learning how to hold awareness without losing connection. It may require developing emotional skills that match our intellectual expansion. Our minds have expanded faster than our social and emotional capacities. We understand global systems, but we still have nervous systems designed for small tribes. Perhaps the path forward is not withdrawing completely from society, nor forcing ourselves back into narratives we no longer believe. Perhaps it involves building smaller circles of honest conversation, spaces where uncertainty is allowed, where disagreement is respectful, where complexity is not reduced to slogans. The same awareness that separates us can also help us recognize others who are quietly questioning. The same technology that fragments can also connect intentionally if used with care. The key difference is intention. Passive consumption increases distance. Active dialogue can reduce it. You are not strange for feeling this loneliness. You are not broken for questioning systems. The discomfort you feel may be a sign of growth, but growth without community feels heavy. And so the task becomes finding ways to remain open without becoming overwhelmed, to stay aware without becoming cynical, to seek truth without losing compassion. The future will likely become even more complex. Information will increase, technologies will accelerate, narratives will compete. The risk of cognitive isolation may grow, but so can our ability to consciously create meaning together. The human story has always evolved. Every era faced its own crisis of understanding. Maybe this moment is asking us to evolve, not only intellectually, but emotionally, to develop resilience that allows us to see clearly without withdrawing completely, to learn how to speak honestly without needing universal agreement, to accept that shared reality may never again be as simple as it once was, and yet still choose connection over silence. Loneliness born from awareness is painful, but it can also be a sign that you are thinking deeply. The challenge is transforming that loneliness into thoughtful community rather than silent separation. And that transformation begins with simple honesty, admitting that the world feels complex, admitting that we do not have all the answers, admitting that even in confusion, We still long to understand, and to be understood, and to be understood. That once you begin to see clearly, once you become more aware of yourself and the world, you are sentenced to a kind of permanent loneliness. This is not a small fear. It is real, and it is dangerous. Because awareness without hope can become a deeper prison than comfortable ignorance. When you see the cracks in the system, when you notice the superficial conversations, when you feel the gap between what is real and what is performed, it can feel like you have stepped outside of the human circle, and standing outside alone can feel colder than ever, questioning anything at all. Again and again, the great shifts in human understanding began with individuals who felt isolated. They saw something others could not yet see. They sensed that the accepted version of reality was incomplete. They often paid a price for that vision. Think of Galileo. His observations about the cosmos challenged the dominant beliefs of his time. He was pushed into isolation because his perception threatened the structure that people relied on. Yet what once seemed dangerous and strange eventually reshaped our understanding of the universe. Or think of the early abolitionists who stood almost alone against systems of oppression that many believed were permanent and natural. At first, they were dismissed, ignored, even attacked, but their isolation was not meaningless. It was part of a larger transformation that had not yet fully unfolded. These examples suggest something important. Conscious isolation, though painful, may not be a mistake. It may be a stage. It may be a stage, a difficult stage, but a necessary one in a larger process of growth. Perhaps what we are experiencing is a kind of evolutionary dissonance. A mismatch between our inner development and the outer systems we inherited. Our awareness has expanded faster than our institutions, our conversations, and our communities. We have developed deeper questions, but we are still living inside structures built for simpler times. It is like growing wings while still being locked inside a cage designed for walking creatures. The discomfort is not proof that something is wrong with us. It may be proof that we are changing. It may be proof that we are changing. There is also a deep paradox here. The same expanded awareness that creates isolation is also the only path toward more authentic connection. The ability to see clearly, to question, to reflect deeply is what makes new bridges possible. Without that awareness, we remain stuck in shallow forms of belonging. With it, we have the potential to imagine new ways of being together. Conscious isolation, when seen this way, is not a final destination. It is a passage. It is the space between an old form of connection that no longer feels true and a new form that has not yet fully been created. This leads to an urgent question. How do we transform this isolation into something creative? How do we turn it from a lonely prison into a starting point for new kinds of community? How do we create spaces, both physical and digital, where depth is not seen as a threat, but as a foundation? These are not abstract questions. They shape how we live every day. They shape how we work, how we relate, how we build families, friendships, and societies. Some people are already experimenting with answers. Around the world, there are intentional communities trying to design new ways of living together. There are digital platforms attempting to encourage slower, more meaningful conversations instead of endless distraction. There are movements focused on sustainability, emotional intelligence, and conscious leadership. What connects these efforts is a shared recognition that our old structures are not enough. If human consciousness is expanding, then our systems must expand with it. Otherwise, the gap between inner awareness and outer reality will continue to grow. At the same time, we face another challenge. We do not yet have a shared language for many of the insights that come with expanded awareness. People feel something shifting inside them, but they struggle to explain it. They sense that old narratives no longer make sense, yet they cannot fully articulate why. This lack of vocabulary creates unnecessary barriers. Two people may share similar perceptions, but fail to connect because they do not have the words to bridge the gap. Developing this language is not just an intellectual task, it is a social necessity. Without it, deeper understanding remains trapped inside individuals. On a personal level, those who experience conscious isolation can cultivate what might be called compassionate presence. This means being fully with others, even when you know they do not see what you see. It means listening without demanding complete agreement. It means accepting that understanding often grows slowly. Paradoxically, when you release the need to be fully understood, connection becomes more possible. When you stop trying to force others to adopt your perspective, you create space for curiosity instead of resistance. It is also important to remember that awareness is not a simple switch that is either on or off. Consciousness exists on a spectrum. Each of us has areas where we see clearly and areas where we are blind. Each of us carries unique insights and unique limitations. Recognizing this brings humility. It prevents the trap of believing that being more aware in one area makes us superior overall. It allows us to approach others with genuine curiosity. Someone who seems limited in one dimension may hold wisdom in another that we have not yet developed. Perhaps the deeper challenge is not escaping isolation, but redefining community. What if community is not about complete agreement? What if it is not about shared illusions of certainty? What if it is about honoring complexity? A community built on the acceptance of human depth would look very different from the ones we know. It would allow disagreement without exile. It would encourage reflection instead of performance. It would value authenticity over constant positivity. In our culture, there is a strong tendency to treat existential discomfort as a problem to be fixed. If you feel alienated, anxious, or disconnected, the assumption is often that something is wrong with you. You are offered medication, productivity hacks, or endless self-optimization strategies. But what if the discomfort is not a defect? What if it is a healthy response to systems that are themselves unhealthy? If a society becomes shallow, fast, and disconnected, then feeling uncomfortable inside it might be a sign of clarity rather than weakness. Seen this way, isolation can be a form of integrity. It can be a refusal to adapt to what feels false. It can be a commitment to remain aligned with your perception of reality, even when that perception is not widely shared. This does not mean rejecting others. It means refusing to betray your own understanding for the sake of easy belonging. That kind of integrity is costly, but it is also the foundation of real change. What makes this moment unique is that this experience is not limited to a small group. Across cultures and countries, people are reporting similar feelings. They are questioning old systems. They are sensing that something fundamental is shifting. This suggests that we are not dealing only with individual crises of meaning. We may be living through a collective transformation, a shift in how humanity understands itself. This shift is happening alongside other global crises: climate instability, technological disruption, economic uncertainty, political tension. These are not separate problems. They reflect deeper imbalances in how we think and organize our world. When a system reaches its limits, cracks appear everywhere, ecologically, emotionally, cognitively. The isolation many people feel is connected to this broader tension. But it may also be a doorway, a signal that we are being pushed to evolve. The philosopher Thomas Kuhn described how scientific revolutions occur. For a long time, anomalies build up, small observations that do not fit the dominant model. At first, they are ignored, then they accumulate. Eventually, the old model cannot contain them anymore. A new paradigm emerges. Something similar may be happening now. More and more people are having experiences that do not fit inside existing cultural narratives. They feel truths that cannot be fully expressed within current systems. These experiences are building pressure, And that pressure may lead to a new understanding of consciousness and community. Every person who navigates conscious isolation with honesty contributes to that shift. Every attempt to speak authentically, every effort to connect deeply, every moment of staying present instead of escaping into distraction. These are not small acts. They are seeds. They prepare the ground for something new, even if the full shape of that new world is not yet visible. Writer Charles Eisenstein speaks about the space between stories, a time when the old story is ending, but the new one has not yet fully formed. Living in that space feels confusing. There is no clear map. Familiar structures feel unstable, but it is also a space full of possibility. New patterns can only emerge when the old ones loosen their grip. Conscious isolation may be part of this in-between phase, not a permanent exile, but a transition. It is to stay awake without becoming bitter, to remain open without becoming naive, to hold difficult questions without rushing to simple answers. This requires courage. It requires creativity. It requires patience with ourselves and with others. Psychologist Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming fully oneself. He understood that this journey often includes loneliness. To discover your deeper identity, you must separate from collective expectations. You must question inherited beliefs. That separation can feel like exile, but it is also a path to integration. What we may be witnessing now is a collective version of that process. Large numbers of people moving through a painful but potentially liberating transformation. The pain of conscious isolation, then, is not something to deny. It is something to respect. It signals growth. It signals tension between old forms and new possibilities. And through that tension, new forms of connection can arise. The poet Rainer Maria Rilke once suggested that renewal does not happen in isolation alone, but in how we come together. Perhaps the challenge of our time is to learn how to gather without demanding that each person shrink their depth. As more individuals awaken to deeper awareness, the urgency of this challenge increases. A world where the most reflective and conscious people feel unable to contribute is a world that is wasting its greatest resource. Expanded human awareness is not a luxury. It is necessary if we are to respond wisely to the complex crises we face. In the end, conscious isolation may be a call to redesign our systems, a call to reshape our conversations, a call to create communities that can hold complexity instead of fearing it. It is not only a problem to solve, it is an invitation, an opening, a portal into forms of connection we are only beginning to imagine.